The taller guy raised his clipboard. According to HOA rules, you owe penalty fees. We're here to take you in. I smirked. Show me the arrest warrant. The shorter one hesitated. You've already been notified. No. A court order. Hand it over. The taller guy stammered. It's issued by the HOA board. Does the HOA have the power to arrest people? They both froze. I pulled out my US Marshal badge and held it up. You were about to detain a federal officer. Their faces went pale. I kept going. Who gave you permission to arrest anyone? Want to be charged with impersonating police right now. The clipboard hit the ground with a thud. The shorter guy bolted. I'm Elias Eli Rourke, 43 years old. A US Marshal born in the dusty redlands of outer New Mexico. My job is hunting down fugitives, keeping order, and for over 2 decades, I've made sure no one disrespects the law I uphold. 7 years ago, I landed in the tiny town of Dusty Palms up north, picking a house free from any association's grip, just a quiet spot to unwind between the chaos. But I never imagined that right here, someone would dare mess with the freedom I hold dear. It started with petty fines, baseless claims, and empty threats. Then, one early morning, they showed up at my door, badges glinting on their chests, voices stiff, announcing I was under arrest for breaking HOA rules. They had no clue I was a US Marshal, and they'd just picked the wrong guy to mess with. Let me tell you this story. It's downright funny but packed with tension. I had no idea what an HOA even was, yet they acted like one hand could cover the whole sky. Leave a comment with the number 9 so I know you're ready for my tale. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you won't miss the wild twists waiting ahead with me. Wishing you a peaceful day. Karen's the type who's obsessed with control, downright addicted to it. She doesn't just love rules. She lives for them. And when there's nothing left to enforce, she invents new ones. The first time I met her, I could feel the annoyance radiating off her, but I never thought she'd take it this far just to make me bend. It began quietly. A letter slipped into my mailbox. Thick envelope, Dusty Palms HOA logo in bold burnt orange up in the corner. Dear homeowner, you're required to register your property with the Dusty Palms Homeowners Association and comply with all community rules, including quarterly fees and maintenance costs. I almost laughed out loud. Required? That's rich, considering I chose this land exactly because it's outside any HOA. I flipped to the next page. A fine. $700 for failure to maintain the property's proper appearance. I glanced outside. Manicured lawn, clean driveway, my SUV parked neatly by the trees. Proper appearance? Where's the problem? I folded the paper, tossed it onto the kitchen counter, and went about my day. But then more letters kept coming nonstop. Within 7 days, my mailbox was overflowing with violation notices. $85 for unapproved exterior changes, even though I hadn't touched a thing. $175 for excessive noise, while I work night shifts and am barely home. $230 for failing to submit garden renovation plans, something I'd never even heard of. Karen wasn't just making up nonsense violations. She was testing me, waiting to see if I'd crack and pay up. I didn't give them a second thought. Then she switched tactics. One afternoon, I stepped outside and saw Karen standing right on my porch, clipboard in hand, eyes locked on me. She wanted me to know I was being watched. I walked over. She twirled her gold-plated watch like I'd kept her waiting. "Hello," she said, her tone soft but dripping with smugness. "I've been looking forward to meeting you for days." I leaned against my truck, arms crossed. "Something important, Karen?" She flipped through her stack of papers, pulled one out, and held it up like it was undeniable proof. "I'm here to remind you about your unpaid violations tied to this property. You haven't submitted a single payment, have you?" I didn't even glance at the sheet. "Karen, I'm not part of your HOA." Her smile didn't budge. "Well," she replied, syrupy sweet and grating. "Dusty Palms has certain standards for every home around here. It's only fair we all pitch in, don't you think?" I let out a short laugh, irritation bubbling up. "Fair? I shook my head, patience wearing thin. I'll say this once. I'm not under your control. Stop stuffing my mailbox with this garbage. It's only fit for the trash. For a split second, I saw her grip tighten on the clipboard, her breath catching in anger. But she masked it fast, flashing a forced smile. Is that so? She said, adjusting her jacket with fake confidence. I just hope you'll think it over. Wouldn't want things to get messy for you. I tilted my head, voice dropping as my frustration spiked. Did you just threaten me? She chuckled lightly, the sound floating away like a breeze. Not at all. Just a friendly tip. Folks around here value unity. I stepped forward, heat rising too fast to hold back. Then let me give you a tip, I said, each word sharp and deliberate. If I see one more made-up notice in my mailbox, I'll file a harassment suit against you. Play HOA queen all you want. Just don't try ruling me. Karen's smile froze on her lips. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away, her sharp heels clicking steadily down my driveway. I stood there, watching her go, shaking my head in disbelief. This should have been the end of it. But no. The next morning, I opened my door and found a pile of trash dumped right in the middle of my lawn. 5 days later, my mailbox was bashed crooked. Then the whispers started. Neighbors shot me wary looks, murmuring to each other whenever I passed by. At first, I told myself I was imagining it, until I ran into Wendell at the gas station. Wendell's an older guy, a longtime Dusty Palms resident. He doesn't say much, but when he does, it's worth listening to. He gave me a concerned look as he filled up his beat-up old truck. Hope you sort out this mess soon, he said, his voice low and steady. I frowned, confusion creeping in. Sort out what? Wendell sighed, setting the gas nozzle down. Karen's been spreading word that you're tangled up in some legal trouble. Says you're the kind of homeowner who stirs up problems, dodges responsibilities. Even hinted at some arrest warrant. I blinked, stunned. An arrest warrant? What kind of new game was this? Wendell shook his head, his face tired. You know how she is. HOA power trip. Power trip? No, this wasn't a game anymore. This was a flat-out smear campaign. The next morning, a letter labeled Final Notice from the Dusty Palms HOA Legal Department was waiting in my mailbox. Inside, bold print screamed with fake authority. Failure to comply with HOA policies will result in legal action. Be advised that an arrest warrant has been issued due to your repeated refusal to follow community regulations. I stared at the paper, then laughed. A loud, angry laugh mixed with amusement. Karen had lost her mind. She actually thought she could scare me with a fake warrant. That's when I realized she wasn't going to stop. She was ramping things up, escalating nonstop. And the next time she tried something, she'd pay a steep price, because what Karen didn't know. She'd just declared war on a US Marshal. Karen's petty fines and made-up violations were one thing, but when I got that letter claiming there was an arrest warrant out for me, I knew she was sinking into desperation. I held the paper up to the light, flipping it over, irritation building with every second. It looked official, serious language and all, but I've seen real warrants. I've signed off on legitimate ones. It was laughable. For starters, no issuing agency was named. A real warrant comes from a judge, not some imaginary Dusty Palms HOA legal department. No case number, no docket code, and the signature at the bottom? Karen Delaney, HOA president. I nearly choked on my morning coffee. Karen genuinely believed she could rattle me by pretending she had arrest powers. Her delusion almost impressed me. Almost. I tossed the paper onto my desk, sat down, hands clasped, the heat in my chest refusing to fade. Karen had crossed a line. From HOA harassment, she'd leapt into legal fraud. I could have called her out right then, sent a cease and desist letter. But why bother when I could let her dig her own grave? So I did nothing. I didn't storm over to her house. I didn't confront her. I just waited. And sure enough, Karen took the bait. The next morning, I woke up to a bright red notice plastered on my front door. Final warning. Failure to pay fines will result in arrest. I snorted, contempt rising. Karen was all in on this game. I left the notice up and went to work. When I got home, another one was there. By the next day, 3 more had appeared. She wanted me to see them, wanted me to think I'd be hauled off in handcuffs. She had no idea that was never going to happen. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, I stepped outside and saw 2 guys standing in my front yard. Matching uniforms, clipboards in hand, cheap plastic badges dangling from their belts. I stopped, sizing them up. They stared back, unmoving. Then one spoke, his voice shaky. "You the homeowner?" I crossed my arms, annoyance bubbling up. "Who are you to stand there asking me that?" The taller one straightened up. "We're with the Dusty Palms HOA compliance team," he declared, oozing fake confidence. "We're here to address your unresolved violations." I almost laughed out loud. Dusty Palms HOA compliance team? Karen had hired some wannabe enforcers. I tilted my head, keeping my tone even. "Oh, you're sure about that?" The other one, shorter, stockier, trying to look tough, nodded hard. "We've got a warrant for your arrest," he insisted. I raised an eyebrow, skepticism clear. "Is that right?" The taller guy lifted his clipboard. "Per HOA regulations," he started, "you've consistently failed to meet community standards and owe penalty fees. We're here to take you in." I let the silence hang, heavy and deliberate. Then I smirked. "All right," I said. "Show me the warrant." The shorter one blinked, fumbling. "You've already been notified," he mumbled. "No." I shook my head firmly. "I want the real thing. Show me a court-issued arrest warrant." The taller one shifted his weight, flustered. Well, this one's from the HOA board," he stammered. "Oh, the HOA board," I repeated, dragging out each word. "Since when does the HOA have the authority to arrest people?" Both guys froze, their awkwardness plain as day. I could sense the panic swirling in their heads, scrambling for an answer that wouldn't make them look like fools. I let them stew in it for a moment. Then I exhaled, reached into my back pocket, and pulled out my badge. Not some cheap plastic knockoff. Not something ordered online. A real, official US Marshal badge. I held it up with 2 fingers, letting them see every detail. The second they realized what it was, their faces went white as a sheet. I tilted my head again. "You 2 were about to detain a federal officer," I said, each word slow and deliberate. The taller one's mouth dropped open. The shorter one took a step back. I smirked. "Come on," I went on. "I've got 2 questions. 1. Where do you think you get the authority to arrest anyone?" Total silence. 2. Do you want to be charged with impersonating police right now? Or after I look up your names? That was it. The taller guy's clipboard hit the ground with a loud thud. The shorter one spun around and bolted down the street like his life depended on it. Me? I just stood there, arms crossed, watching them stumble away. I didn't chase them, why bother? That afternoon I ran their names, Miles and Tucker, turns out, and oh, I struck gold. Karen wasn't just hiring fake guards. She was running a shameless extortion racket. She had no idea I was about to bring it all crashing down. Karen had gone too far. Fake fines and petty harassment? That was just the warm-up. Now she was staging arrests, too arrogant to see she'd dug her own grave. I looked into Miles and Tucker, the 2 clowns who tried to take me in. Not cops, not security, just lackeys in a sham crew Karen had cooked up, amateurs playing at power. But that wasn't the worst of it. They'd scammed dozens of homeowners with this trick, and somehow it worked. I dug through public reports, legal filings, and HOA financial records. Turns out Karen's compliance team had been at it for 9 months. She wasn't just inventing violations. She was running a full-blown extortion system. Here's how it went. Target anyone who wouldn't join the HOA, hit them with fake fines, bogus penalties, and phony debt notices. If they ignored it, escalate. Send the HOA police to intimidate them. If they still didn't pay, seize their homes for unpaid debts, and sell them off to HOA insiders with special fees. It was organized theft. People lost their houses over this, and no one had stopped her. But Karen wasn't working alone. I checked city records, hunting down every lawsuit tied to her. And then I found it, the name of a judge. A local official who always sided with Karen, signing off on home seizures without a second glance. Maybe she bribed him, or maybe he was too lazy to care. Either way, it was my jackpot. If those rulings weren't legit, every forced foreclosure she'd pushed through could be overturned. Lawsuits, damages, prosecutions. Karen built her empire on a house of cards, and I was about to knock it down. Still, I wanted to see how far she'd push it. So I set a trap. I took one of her fake fines, the latest final warning about legal action, and responded. I sent a request for an official meeting, playing nervous, like I was ready to negotiate. Karen bit hard. The next morning, an email popped up. An invite to an official HOA resolution hearing. No location, just a date, time, and a warning about consequences if I didn't show. I almost laughed out loud. She was walking right into my plan, clueless as ever. Karen thought she had me cornered. She believed I was scared, believed I was about to cave. She had no idea she was charging headfirst into a trap. The HOA resolution hearing was set for Wednesday afternoon. No formal courtroom, no legal venue, just a rented community center meeting room. Meaning, it wasn't real. Karen had staged a fake hearing, just like she'd done to countless others. A theatrical stunt to bully people into handing over property, paying fake fines, or folding under her HOA extortion scheme. I had no intention of negotiating. I just wanted to end this once and for all. So I made my final calls. Local police, the district attorney's office, and the federal prosecutor's office. Because this wasn't just civil fraud anymore. This was federal mail fraud, wire fraud, racketeering. It was time for Karen to bury herself. I showed up early, dressed casual, calm and relaxed. Karen was already there, sitting at the head of a long table, clipboard in front of her, a cheap wooden gavel by her side. A gavel. She'd actually brought a gavel. Behind her sat 4 HOA board members, trying to look serious but failing miserably. Across from them were 3 homeowners I recognized, people Karen had targeted before. They looked nervous. Karen? She looked smug. She flashed a fake victorious smile the moment I walked in. "So glad you could make it," she said, gesturing to an empty chair. I strolled over, sat down slowly, clasped my hands and smiled back. "Of course," I said. "I wouldn't miss this for anything." Karen kicked off her speech right away, reading out loud a list of fabricated violations, exaggerated fines, and legal threats that didn't hold an ounce of weight. She threw around terms like breach of covenant and community infractions, phrases that sounded lawful but were hollow as could be. I didn't bother listening to her words. I watched her instead. The way she hesitated every time she glanced down at her papers. The way she sped up when listing the fines like she wanted to gloss over the details. The way she kept sneaking looks at her watch, like she was waiting for something. She wasn't just trying to intimidate me. She was buying time. I leaned back in my chair, tilting my head. "Karen," I said, cutting her off mid-sentence. She blinked, startled. I gave a faint smile. "Let me take a guess. Your HOA cops are about to burst in and haul me off, right?" The air turned thick with silence, almost suffocating. One of the board members shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Karen darted a quick glance at the door. "Bingo." I checked my wristwatch. "Well," I went on, standing up, "before they show up, how about we bring in some folks who actually enforce the law?" And right on time, the door flew open. Uniformed police poured in. Karen's face went as white as a sheet. The board members lost it. One of them even scrambled under the table. Trailing behind the cops was the assistant federal prosecutor, a woman named Marla, with no tolerance for HOA scams, clutching a stack of documents ready to sink Karen. "Karen Delaney," Marla stepped forward, unfolding an arrest warrant. "You're under arrest for fraud, extortion, impersonating a legal authority, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud." Karen's mouth opened, then clamped shut. She couldn't get a word out. "No, hold on. You've got this all wrong," she yelled, her voice breaking. "Oh, we've got it perfectly straight," I said, crossing my arms. "You just ran a fake hearing to steal people's property. then sent your phony goons to arrest me. Not the brightest move, Karen. She spun toward the board, her eyes wild with panic. Do something. But the board? They were useless, hands already raised, quiet as mice. Karen's grip on power was gone. She stood alone. And when the cops snapped the cuffs on her wrists, it finally hit her. She'd lost everything. You're wrong, she screamed. This is just a misunderstanding. Marla just shook her head. That's for a judge to decide, Karen. Karen thrashed and hollered the whole way out. Me? I stood there watching her go. Because Karen had been tormenting this neighborhood for years. And now, at last, she was facing the consequences. Karen Delaney shrieked about mistakes and abuse of power, while the flickering police lights splashed across the walls behind her. The people she'd harassed for years sat quietly in their chairs, watching, almost frozen. And when the door slammed shut behind her, the room exploded. Some were stunned. Others were livid. Because all at once, those outrageous HOA fees, mysterious fines, and forced evictions, they weren't just poor management. They were a criminal network. The aftermath? Oh, it was unforgettable. The second the news broke, the neighbors started buzzing. I wasn't Karen's only target. People came forward with their stories, phony debt notices, forged HOA contracts, illegal threats. One family shared how Karen forced them to sell their home over a debt that didn't exist, on land that was never even part of the HOA. Another homeowner had shelled out tens of thousands in fake fines just to stop her relentless hounding. Karen had turned the HOA into her personal profit scheme for years, and now she was finished. In just 5 days, the entire HOA board was under investigation. Less than 3 weeks later, the HOA was legally dissolved. No more fake fines, no more pretend cops, no more Karen. She thrashed against the charges, blaming the board, the fake goons, even claiming she was the victim. But the evidence towered over her. Karen wasn't just facing penalties. She was hit with heavy charges. Fraud, wire fraud, extortion, impersonating a legal authority. And when the judge delivered the sentence, no probation, no light tap, 8 years in prison. Karen Delaney, who'd once intimidated people with HOA rules, was now locked in a real jail, under real law. Meanwhile, the HOA fell apart completely. The remaining board members scrambled for lawyers. Every homeowner she'd cheated got their money back. Families Karen had driven from their homes filed lawsuits against her. And me? I was finally free. No HOA, no harassment, just peace. Every time I walk by Karen's old house, now sporting a for sale sign, stripped of its dominance, just an empty shell on the market, I can't help but smile. Because in the end, she thought she was untouchable. But she never saw real justice coming to settle the score. Karen Delaney had plagued this neighborhood for years. She churned out fake fines, cooked up violations, and forced people to pay unlawful fees. She even went as far as stealing homes through sham HOA hearings. But now, she didn't just lose her seat. She lost everything. When word of her arrest spread, the whole neighborhood turned against her. First, it was shock, then fury. Because suddenly, those absurd HOA fees, shadowy fines, and brutal evictions, they weren't just sloppy management. They were a crime syndicate. Neighbors who'd blindly followed her rules demanded to know where their money had gone. And when the books were opened, total disaster. Karen had siphoned HOA funds into her personal accounts, funneled them through non-existent maintenance projects, and paid security companies that didn't exist. She didn't just abuse power. She stole outright. Now she's paying for it in prison. The charges: fraud, extortion, wire fraud, impersonating a legal authority. And when the judge read the verdict, no probation, no mercy, 8 years. Karen Delaney, who'd once bullied people with HOA laws, is now locked up in a real prison, under real oversight, where no one gives a damn about her community standards. At the same time, the HOA was erased. The board was forced to step down, every last one of them. The HOA was legally disbanded. No more fake fines, no more sham cops, no more Karen. For the first time since I moved here, I can enjoy my land without the HOA breathing down my neck. Every time I pass Karen's old house, now up for sale, its power gone, just another vacant listing. I can't help but grin, because in the end, she thought she was invincible. But she never expected real justice to come knocking. What do you think of this showdown between Eli Rourke and Karen? A clash with no gunfire but dripping with tension. A top law student who heard this story put it this way: "It's not just a battle between one man and a system. It's a mirror showing how fragile self-appointed power can be." Karen, like a clumsy architect, built her control castle out of flimsy lies. Fake fines, empty threats, even bogus arrest warrants. All just to collapse under Eli's sharp gaze. The real twist isn't that Eli won. It's how he let Karen dig her own hole. Every step she took deeper into her delusions, every notice she slapped on his door, it was another shovel burying her own game. In today's world, we run into Karens everywhere. People enforcing nonsense rules, from neighborhood bosses to social media corners. This story offers a lesson. Don't rush to swing back. Let the truth do the heavy lifting. Like Eli did, quietly, calmly, letting the other side expose their own flaws. It's not just smart. It's an art, turning someone else's mess into your own leverage. This tale's here for fun and learning, not to judge or offend anyone. Drop your thoughts below. Hit like, share, and subscribe so we can keep unpacking stories like this together. Thanks for sticking with this video to the end. Wishing you a peaceful day, and I'll catch you in the next one.